All right, my name is Kyle Brooks, and I'm going to be talking about something that, based off of our age range, that we've all had some sort of experience with, either personal or indirect, and that is alcohol, but more specifically, lowering the drinking age of alcohol in the U.S. My three claims will be that A, it will eventually reduce that, or I'm sorry, that's my main claim. My main claim is that it will eventually reduce the incidents that happen on campus, college campuses, and in general throughout the population. My three major claims are that A, it'll be more culturally acceptable if the drinking age is reduced. B, also that what was my second point? B, that that will not be viewed so much as a taboo as much as something illegal. And C, which pertains more to the college aspect of that, there should be less evictions and trouble caused by the alcohol. So for my secondary point A, Dr. Heath of the Anthropological Board of I believe it was Brown University states, claims that alcohol has been a part of human history ever since humanity was old enough to start fermenting. So around 2,000 years ago, ancient Greece, when we were building things and inventing sports. So what this means for human history is that alcohol has not necessarily been a taboo, and throughout human history, it has actually been a proper drink. When it was actually considered a taboo is based off a puritanical ethic. And so, because of this restriction, people ages from early on, say, early high school age get into it because that's the age when they most want to rebel. However, if, say, that we reduce the lower drinking age, then there shouldn't be any more rules to break. Also, parents will have a better chance, an earlier chance to educate their children. So the result of that would be that there would be less incidents, especially on colleges, which leads me to my second point, the more incident part. The World History Fact Book actually had statistics on the number of alcohol-related incidents, and it claimed that ages 13 to 20, it was around 20% of the population, I believe, ages 13 to 20 had engaged in heavy drinking and had health consequences, abusive consequences, and other consequences as a result of being engaged in drinking. I cannot say for sure what the household of each of those individuals were, but lowering the drinking age would have reduced this number simply because of that. Without a actual goal of drinking, that's wrong. With the taboo that's actually set in place, as I said from my earlier point, which probably led most middle schoolers to drink, I'm sure we all remember what our middle school years were like. Being rebellious, testing new things, which is why the age goes so low as 13, as cited in the World History Fact Book. We want to, as people, we want to break societal norms and find out things on our own. But by lowering the drinking age and actually getting a chance to be exposed to something new, there would be a better chance to learn about what we can handle. It's the same logic as driving. The earlier you start driving, typically the better experience of driving you get. I'm not saying that 13-year-olds should go out and buy a keg and start experimenting with it. What I am saying is that there needs to be some sort of minor exposure where they actually learn about how much their bodies can handle at that point in time. Because through that way, they will be able to have an idea as to what they will be able to handle in the future and actually the detrimental effects of it later on. Now, as for my third point, the college campuses, there is another study done by the the name escapes me, it's a government site that says that college drinking, well, illegal drinking from, or just drinking in general, from high school to college jumps up by around 20%, and this is from illegal age to legal drinking age. So the campus, so the campus has another problem. Let's say Cal Poly Pomona, for instance, has a problem of restricting, well, a law that has been ignored by 70% of the population. So if we lower it that way to say 18, then A, high school students will already have the knowledge that they need to stop drinking, to not drink, and B, the college can invest other funds needed to fund, well, to direct at other projects. And that is why you should love the drinking age. I'm out of time on this one.
You don't need to stand there. That makes you feel too much like a target.
I thought I was bullet riddled already.
All right, let me pick out a couple of the things that I think are pretty good, and then we'll talk about some of the things that are problematic. First of all, even though you don't have notes, even though you're kind of winging it, you do a nice job talking to the audience and trying to relate to us, and I think that helps your credibility quite a bit. You also seem to have a pretty good grasp of what your argument is. Now, you do struggle a couple of times trying to find the right phrase or explanation that's going on there. Usually you kind of get to it, even though it's not perfect. It's closer than a lot of people would have come, and I thought that you've got the right characteristic for effectively communicating with people, so you can build your ethos that way. But your ethos is undermined by your inability to recall data specifically, to be able to cite it correctly, and to occasionally drift off and say, well, what was that point? No, that wasn't it. It was, and just being confused. So I think that's a little bit problematic. One of the famous examples of that, probably nobody in here will remember, Rick Perry, who was the governor of Texas when he was running for president a few years ago. He says, and I got my three things that the three departments that we're going to get rid of. And he goes, 1, 2, and the third one is, what was it? It's a third one. And he stood there for like a minute trying to remember what the third one was. And basically this was a guy who had been going up in the polls, and like the next day he started going down the polls, and of course he was not the candidate in 2012. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to credibility things. When you can't hold on to a key piece of information, people are going to look at it and say, well, do they really know what they're talking about? You gave, like I said, I think you gave a good argument without any evidence in it. You made reference to the 20% figure in two different places. You got kind of hypothetical ideas about what it is that encourages people to drink, and so the biggest problem is, of course, the lack of evidence. You actually organize it pretty well. It's easy to follow. I do think there's a problem with the proposition because you tell us what the topic is. You don't necessarily make a claim about it. And if you do make a claim, it's almost a policy claim. So you got to be careful about that, and that's why you want to phrase it a little bit more carefully. All right, that's as far as we'll go with that. We'll let it sit.